So I'm here to talk about understanding more about customers' emotional states. And actually, we've had lots of presentations and lots of suppliers really working in the high-tech side of customer experience. And I would say that a lot of what I'm talking about today is more low-tech. It is about that human interaction. And as our last speakers were saying, and Oki was remarking, that can have a huge impact on NPS and how customers feel about your business. Now, when I say it's low-tech, I have got some video to share, but I did have a slight problem in that my laptop would not connect to the equipment that's here. So we have got somebody back at the office to download them onto YouTube, because I'm not allowed to do stuff like that on my laptop. And it should work on here, but it's not been tried and tested by myself. So I brought my own laptop, so I was super sure it would work. So now you've got that excitement about will the videos work or won't they? So I'll have to wait and see. So I'm going to talk about a few aspects of understanding emotional states. And I thought I'd ask you, first of all, about how are you feeling right now? And I thought these cats really depicted lots of emotions that I'm sure our customers have when they come and interact with us. So is anybody here feeling like cat number 2, like still raring to go and really quite happy? Yeah? Yeah, a few of you, yeah. And what about cat number 1? Like, is anybody who thinks, oh no, there is somebody, I thought, will anybody admit feeling like cat number 1? There is somebody who will admit it. So I will refer back to these cats every now and again, because I think they really do sum up some of those emotions that I'm sure customers have when they interact with us. And when I was planning this, I thought there was like 3 things I would separate it into. The first thing is about the impact that the experience of dealing with your company will have on a customer. So regardless of how they were feeling that day, there'll be things that happen when they come and interact with you that will affect their emotions, for good or for bad. There's also another aspect to this, which is what was the starting point of customers' emotions? So where were they, how were they feeling deep down inside themselves? And then the last aspect is something that we talk about a lot more, and the FCA have really put a big push on this, understanding more about particular customer vulnerabilities. So I'll touch on that at the end. And all of these things are things that we spent quite a bit of time talking about at Legal & General. I lead the operations for the life side of the business, which is 4 million retail customers and about 3,000 corporates. And we've got 900 people supporting those customers every day. Prior to going to L&G, I worked at O2, the telecoms company, and people sometimes say, well, what's the main difference between telecoms and financial services? And when I think of my days at O2, I think that people thought if their iPhone went wrong, it was a matter of life and death. Whereas at L&G, the things that happen really are involving life and death. So we've spent quite a lot of time thinking about how we can connect better with customers and understand their emotions. So what about understanding what it's like to deal with your company? I don't think there's really any magic formula, and you just have to walk in the customer's shoes. And what that means, and I'm sure that a lot of people in this room will have done this, is just walk through your customer journey. So think about what it's like to go onto the website, and if you offer chat or messenger type support on there, what's it like to engage with that? How is it when you try and find a number and when you try and get through? When it comes to getting through to somebody, then you can experience that. What's your IVR like? What's your music like? What's it like after 20 minutes? How does it feel? And all of those things. And we have been on a constant journey going through, on the life side of our business, these customer journeys. And it seems like it has never really ended. We've always been working on it in my whole 7 years I've been there. And we're always finding new things. One of which was when we looked at where does our number appear, what numbers appear on old letters and on our website and might be out there to contact us. We found that for new business alone, we had 35 different numbers. They all went into different places, and it meant that customers could be rooting around all over the business to try and get to the people that could help them with that today. So when you do walk in the customer's shoes and find all of these things, sometimes it's very enlightening and not always in a good way, but it does mean you can do something about those things. Once customers are talking to you, then they're kind of in your process, whether that's on chat or it's actually in a telephone interaction. And there'll be lots of things about that will have a way that it makes you feel. Might feel you're in a process. There might be language that's used that you don't really understand particularly well or wouldn't expect your customers to understand. So it's well worth walking through it. You might follow up in writing once you've been on the phone. And we seem to have a real penchant for this, because in our life journey, we worked out that if you went through our underwriting journey, you could get up to 29 different letters from us, and they all came in the post. Up until 3 years ago, they'd land on the doorstep. And customers certainly were able to tell us how they felt about that, in that some took photos and sent photos of all these letters to us to say, do you know what you're doing to me, Legal & General? And that was a few years ago, and over time we have done lots of work to cut that down, and now it has all gone online as well. But do you know what it's like to be on the receiving end of the things that you send out at the end of interactions? And then a lot of customers will look back into you, either going back through the starting position to resolve the issue, particularly if something in the follow-up correspondence isn't easy to understand. So you can imagine that if you do walk in the customer's shoes, you will understand some of how it feels to actually deal with you, whether that is being perplexed, being frustrated, and you might get a nice taste of actually a happy interaction with some of your people. Forrester did some work to have a look at what were emotions engendered in customers that were loyalty enhancing and which ones were loyalty weakening. And in their research, they found, not surprisingly, the loyalty weakening ones were annoyance, disappointment, and frustration. And a few weeks ago, I had to reset my online banking password. And I went online and ended up in a loop. I was just going round in circles, ending up back at the same place, but wasn't able to reset the password. So I gave my bank a ring, and probably took about 15 minutes to get to somebody. And when I got through and explained what had happened, they said, oh yeah, I know about that problem. What browser are you using? And I told them, and they said, our reset facility doesn't work on that browser. And I said to them, well, in your IVR that I've just called, you spent about 5 minutes telling me all the things I could do for myself. So why did you not think to mention that? And then I wouldn't have had to wait for 15 minutes to speak to you, and I could have sorted this out. And the poor guy said, oh, I keep telling them, but nobody ever has done anything about it. So I do quite like my bank. It didn't make me want to change. But not only was I quite annoyed and frustrated, but then I was quite disappointed, because I thought, you know about this, but you've just not done anything. On the other side of things, advocacy driving emotions are when customers feel confident about dealing with you, they feel a sense of respect and a sense of value. And I had a good example of feeling this way when I made a bit of a boo-boo. I was booking some flights to go to Scotland and thought, just do that before I go to bed for the following weekend. And about 10 o'clock, I did it on my mobile. And I got the confirmation email come through from BA. And instead of booking to go from Gatwick to Glasgow return, I booked to go from Glasgow to Gatwick return. Well, I live in Brighton, so obviously I had to go from Gatwick to get to Glasgow before I could come back. So I'd done the flights the wrong way round, so I had to ring BA. This was about 11 at night by this time, so I was quite uptight because what was going to happen now? I had the wrong flights, but they did have people there to speak to me, and they were really nice and calm, much calmer than my husband was when he discovered what I'd done. And they helped me sort it out. So I'm telling you all now about that great experience. So I did feel that they didn't make me feel silly, so I felt respected, I felt valued, they sorted it out, and they were there when I needed them, even though it was 11 at night. So I think that this is quite a good list, and if you want to walk through your customer journeys, I think you can pick out all the places where you probably are disappointing your customers and frustrating them, and missing out on opportunities to really show you value them. And I'm sure nobody in this room will be a stranger to doing these brown paper exercises where you literally do that walkthrough and test out all the aspects of the journey. But alongside that, we've found it really important to really build our understanding of what customers think on the insight we get from our surveys. We do monthly surveys, and there's things that we would probably miss in our journeys, but because we just know the process too well, so you think you've got to accept that you can walk in the customer's shoes, but you've got a certain amount of blindness. One good example of this that we found was that when you buy life insurance, quite often we'll run offers on like Money Supermarket and give vouchers to the value of about £100 for M&S, but the vouchers don't come out to customers until they've paid their 6th monthly premium. But all the way through those 6 months, we get lots of calls about where are my vouchers. Now, we could look at that process and think the voucher process works. We think the communication's clear, but clearly it isn't. It misses the mark for customers because they think they're going to get them right away. And that's where we then have to take that feedback and then do some testing with actual customers and get the correspondence right. So you do learn a lot from feedback, as you can imagine, alongside your own thoughts. And then there's segmenting your customer base. We are working on segmentation at L&G. It's been there probably for quite some time from a sales and marketing perspective, but we've not brought that into the contact centre too much. But we will be soon so that our advisors know which segment customers sit within, and it will give them a few key bits of information, like customers who may feel less comfortable with financial products, or people that are more likely to be in a hurry and want you to get things done for them as quickly as possible. But it is quite a blunt instrument because not all customers, even in the same segment, are going to be the same. So this led us to start to think a lot more about the emotions of customers and understanding them much more as individuals, which brings me on to the next aspect of this, which is what is the starting point state of your customers and understanding them a bit more as individuals. If I go back a few years, we quite often in my team meetings listened to calls and interactions, and the calls weren't bad. We got the job done, but they were quite process-driven. There wasn't necessarily that real sort of human touch and human link. So we started to think more about how do we build much more of a connection with our customers and understand them a bit better. And if I go back to my cats, then you've got people who probably like cat one who think, oh God, I've got to phone Legal & General today. It's the last thing they want to do. People who might be quite happy, but you might get customers who are more like cat 6 and 7, where maybe just some bad stuff's going on in their life right now and they're not in the best place. And we do deal with customers who might have been diagnosed with terminal illnesses, they might have been bereaved, they might change their life insurance because they've got divorced. So they're not always ringing us in the happiest of circumstances. And we need to understand a bit about where they might be coming from, as well as understanding people who's just something bad's happened and they're a bit upset. So when we got talking about this, we thought, how can we start to make better connections with customers? And we built a program called Customer Experience Matters. And that's something that we've used over the last 4 years now to put all of our frontline people through. And this is where the videos come in, because we wanted to bring into the room some customer stories to get people talking about where customers might be coming from and how they might feel. So I wanted to show you a couple of these, and I'm just going to see if I move on, if this will work, and you can see a little bit about Jake's stories. I've got a few videos, but they're only about a minute each.
When Vicky left, my whole world just fell apart. We'd been struggling for a while, but I somehow thought we'd find a way through all the bad times. Having Jess, my youngest, was meant to bring us closer together, but in the end, it didn't work out like that. In fact, the demands of looking after a newborn baby made things worse. So much so that Vicky eventually left me for someone else. Losing her was bad enough, but losing the kids nearly sent me over the edge. I was struggling to get through each day, but the world doesn't stop turning just because you're in pain. And I had to get to grips with my future. So, it wasn't long after she left that I decided to get Vicky removed from my life insurance policy. This was easier said than done though, as I soon discovered that my insurers wouldn't do this without my signature. And I just couldn't face contacting her about it. Hoping I still might get around this somehow, I gave the insurers a call. It was an absolute nightmare having to go through all the menus and options, and then I got put on hold for what felt like ages. I was about to give up when I finally got through to an actual human being. Unfortunately, the girl who answered sounded distracted, and I didn't get the impression that she was at all focused on what I was actually saying. It was like she was in a hurry and I was taking up too much of her time. Anyway, despite my pleas, she made it pretty clear that I had to somehow get hold of Vicky's signature. She abruptly ended our conversation with a half-hearted, "Is there anything else we can help you with today?" And that was that.
Okay, so poor Jake, he does sound really quite down. And that's been one of the videos that we've used, and a really good talking point about how people might feel, and people might be in scenarios that our people have just never experienced for themselves. I've got a second short video, and this is from customers who are involved in our general insurance business where they've actually had a flood. And we've used a lot of these videos on the general insurance side to really bring to life what it's like to be in some of the scenarios our customers find themselves in. And again, we've used that in the training as a real talking point. It's not like we're setting lots of rules about what to do if you come across these scenarios. It's about giving people the tools to listen and really engage with customers in a much more human way.
We got a phone call about 9 o'clock. His mum telling us she'd had a phone call off a neighbour, telling us, I think we should come home because our house could be flooded.
The conservatory was
Brown,
yeah. Things were floating around in there quite nicely. The water drain in the front room had been soaked up by, we had a big rug in the front room. The floor was wet, starting to swell in the lift. Yeah, all the photographs were brought down, one fell off, weren't the floor.
There were photos before, like digital cameras basically, all ones with the negatives in the packets.
Yes, we had a few tears, didn't we?
Yeah, especially the older me when my son was born in the hospital with people animals I've no longer got in my life. That I've lost my dad and my sister. I can't replace them, can I?
No.
Yeah, so it really does bring it home, and that's really sad, that one actually, to our people about when people call and they're in this scenario that their whole home's just been flooded. Our natural reaction is to start to want to do something, get people out there, get people in, start drying it, arrange alternative accommodation, and all of these things. And all of these things are really important, but sometimes you just got to stop and listen and let people talk as well. So in the programme that we designed, Customer Experience Matters, it has got quite a few modules. It's got 3 main teaching modules, plus a lot of pre-work. And we've used the videos to really get people to start talking about how they would handle these sorts of customers when they come through, not giving them loads of answers, but really empowering them to start to think about what is the right thing to do in those scenarios. And on here, the modules that people go on are the bits in the middle, and they're all in blue. But all the pieces in red are all the places that our line managers have got to engage with our colleagues going through the programme. And we've trained all of our line managers in coaching over the last few years, and they have to coach our colleagues on the job as well. So using call listening and coaching to really bring home some of the principles that we're teaching on the Customer Experience Matters programme. And people have got a lot out of going on it and really enjoyed it. And I think it has made a difference to those interactions. So now when we listen to calls, we do tune in a lot more to what the customers are actually telling us, listening for triggers and how they might be feeling, and engaging in very different conversations. So I've got a little clip of a couple of our customer advisors who went on camera to talk about their take on dealing with customers. And it's certainly very different now to how I think it would have been a few years ago.
Every person on the phone could be me, my mum, my dad, my nan, so I treat them as such.
You know, when a customer says, I've lost a ring, but it was given to me by my husband who's passed away. And then I think about my father who's passed away, and like, how would I feel if I lost something like that from him? And then you try and talk to them and try and really understand what they're trying to say to you.
People do open up on the phones, they do like open up their emotions completely. I mean, I've had people swearing on the phone to me about what's happened, and I've had people, you know, sobbing.
When you speak to a customer, initially they might be quite emotional, and then to myself, I always think the best way I can realise how I've done well on that call is how the mood has changed. towards the end, they're thanking you, they're happy, and then you say, is there anything I can help you? And you know, when they say, you've been wonderful, it's literally like a massive pat on your back, and you really think like you've done something worthwhile.
Yep, so there are people that I do know from our contact centre and not untypical of the kind of approach that we've really encouraged our people to take. So we're on to the home straight now, which is to think a little bit about vulnerable customers. So this is something that the FCA have really impressed upon financial services companies we need to start thinking a lot more about. And there's some analysis which shows that nowadays, I think 1 in 14 people over 65 could be suffering from dementia, plus a whole range of other vulnerabilities that we've got to be aware of when we're actually interacting with customers, whether that is financial struggle, illness, caring responsibilities, lack of understanding, learning difficulties, depression, all of these things. And we commissioned a survey of disabled customers and customers suffering from various illnesses to find out what they thought and what were the challenges they had in dealing with financial services companies. So they weren't necessarily our own customers, they were talking more generally. And these are some of the things that they had to say. The customer on the top right, I explained my disability and I might be slow to respond, but then they spoke to me like I was a child. I felt under pressure the whole time. They had a time limit on the call and I was being an inconvenience because I had to take longer. And we got through the call in the end, but then they rattled off a big list of things that were too fast for me to follow. So this brought home again that when customers feel like they're in a process and that process doesn't change to adapt to them, then it's not going to be a very fruitful interaction for them. And luckily, these are the sorts of things that our Customer Experience Matter programs also addressed in terms of really tuning in a lot more to customers. And we've done a few things around this. We've now got a vulnerable customer policy, which is really looking at customers who, if they're not treated, and I think these are good words, with an appropriate level of care and consideration, then they may suffer detriment. On top of the policy, which was a joint working party I was on a couple of years ago, we also did some education materials for all employees, not just customer-facing, because thinking about vulnerability has to work from the very product all the way through to the claim. And we also thought a lot about how do we empower our colleagues as well, because you can't legislate for everything and say, you'll get this sort of customer, so do this. And I was under a lot of pressure at the time to come up with rules for people. But I thought all we can do really is empower people and open their eyes to this and let them be themselves. And everybody can deal with an elderly neighbour or an auntie who's struggling when they're not here at work. So let them do that when they're here and they'll find a way. And we've had some really great examples where our colleagues have just done the right thing at the right time. We had an elderly customer who'd been flooded and they couldn't cook any dinner and they'd nobody to bring anything round to them or to look after them. And the advisor just decided they would order them a microwave to be delivered and installed that same day so that they could cook some food. And that was the right thing to do for that customer. We had another scenario where a customer called and asked us about the suicide terms on their policy, and the advisor could tell that they were in a vulnerable place and they didn't really know what to do, so they rang the Samaritans themselves, and the Samaritans advised them to find somebody who was connected with that customer to contact any contact we had, and we had their doctor's details because they'd gone through our medical underwriting process, and the advisor contacted the doctor. Now, sometimes there's no easy answer or right answer, but you just have to do something, and some of these things just feel like the right thing to do as well. We've worked a lot with different charities to help us and built a lot of their recommendations into our training. And then from a more sort of high-tech perspective, this is something which is just getting off the ground now, but we have got a digital development team, and they run hackathons twice a year, and you can put ideas into the hackathon to get them to do digital development for you. And one of our areas in the business which is involved in lifetime mortgages, so allowing older people to release equity in their homes, they were really keen to develop some sort of call listening software that would allow them to pick up triggers on a call where somebody might be feeling under, either not understanding things, maybe they were repeating a lot of the questions and answers, maybe under duress, under pressure from a family member to actually release the equity. Maybe that wasn't the right thing for them. So the call listening software was designed to look for some of these triggers and help the guys on the phone identify some of these scenarios. Now that is still in development. They have called it the Guardian Angel, which I thought was quite clever. And we're waiting in my division to see what comes of that, because we would then look at how we can use it as well. So where's all this got us? Well, nowadays when we listen to calls, like I said, I think we sound a lot warmer and more human in our interaction. And our customer feedback of every month we'll get about 600 comments, and usually about 400 of them are about dealing with the person. So although we can automate things and go to other channels, the power of dealing with people is still very important to customers. And we do get some lovely feedback. The one on the top left said, the girl who dealt with my inquiry was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Sorted my problem out right away, and she was very pleasant, and I was very happy with her. And we see lots and lots of comments like that. And our NPS is now 45 in the month of January this year. And when we started measuring that about 5 years ago, I think we started off, it was about 12. So over that time, we've done lots of work in the journey, like I've shown you, to really step through and start to correct things. And that is an ongoing thing. We've not, definitely far from perfect yet, still work to do, but we're getting there. And we've done a lot of work with our people to improve the quality of the interactions as well. So I'll come back to my cats. I don't know now if we've got people who perhaps feel like number 4, because it's like, yay, we'll be going home soon. And I hope I could leave you like cat 8, because they look like they're just really quite content and they've learned new things. So that concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to take questions.